دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء
هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار ظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the second interview of Finding Me, the ITV networks, today with my very special guest, and this is Professor Nelson Maldonado-Torres. Now, we spoke extensively about different decolonial discussions in the previous interview, and I want to focus on this one very much on the South African scenario, because Professor Maldonado-Torres has spent significant amount of time with the activists in South Africa, with the fallist movements, tracing the behavior patterns, the discussions, the narratives, etc. And I think he can lend some invaluable insight to many of us who are struggling to understand the way forward in terms of this movement. I don't think many of us have lost hope. As I explained to Ramon Gross-Fugel, the movement has been violently suppressed, but it does not mean that the desire, the ambitions, or the will of the activists have been suppressed. So with that, thank you very much again for joining me and for giving me this time. I know you're exhausted and it's been a long day.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Professor, you've spent a lot of time with the South African students. You've done extensive work on the movement, the fees must fall, roads must fall, decolonizing the education, the curricula. You've spoken about decolonizing the university, etc. What is perhaps for you the most profound insights that you have gained from this?
The most profound insight will be, two. First, the degree to which the structure and ethos of segregation and coloniality exist in the day-to-day life of this country. So you don't have to be here long before you begin to feel the weight of that ethos.
Wow.
And is heavy, is heavy on anyone who lives here. And you coming, coming from the United States, which is not anywhere the panacea of freedom or post-racial, nothing like that, but it's also so-called post-segregation. It has also a history of long formal segregation, coming and feeling so overwhelmed
burdened
by that ethos.
Yeah.
That is something. And the second is the determination and strength and intelligence of those who are calling attention that not only to the existence of that, but also trying to wake everybody up, saying there is a problem. This is a problem, it's not normal. And any sense that we live in a democracy, that it seems to be more a myth than an actuality. So those two things have seemed very important. The presence of this ethos of segregation and coloniality, the denial, as we were discussing before about that, but then some sectors rising up. And it's not surprising that it's the youth, in a way, that is leading part of that movement. It's not the only group, but it's one of the most vocal, and maybe in terms of the grammar of decolonization has been the leading one. So that has also the determination, the strength, that has also been another.
Do you think that the older generation feel challenged by the fact that the youth are coming with a conversation that they don't understand, terminology that they cannot relate to perhaps, and that is very challenging to the way in which they view the world, to the way in which they understand the world. And that's why from within our own societies we're facing, this, what I call the schizophrenia. On the one hand, yes, we support the movement, but everywhere is this but that comes in to the particular dialogue in terms of fees must fall, roads must fall, Afrikaans must fall.
Yes, I think absolutely, and I was able to see that clearly in a number of occasions when I was here. One of them, George Bezos, was in the audience, and I had the privilege and the honor of meeting him. But it was very revealing that I'm able to talk with him before I give my presentation, and so it was very revealing to me that he wants to talk with Fanon about Fanon with me. But basically, the point that he wants to make, and he wants to hear what I think, is that, well, Fanon, is it the case that he was very important, very relevant, but in the context of French imperialism.
Right.
One, not so much here.
Okay.
And even if here, before 1994,
Okay.
but not after 1994.
Okay.
Right. When, of course, he's very much aware that Fanon is one of the intellectual guides of the students. So right there, that tells you, he's in another script. There is that generation, maybe a number of people from that generation sharing that idea, that sense of puzzlement, that why Fanon? Isn't it the case that? And so he told me, and I gave him a response saying that no, he's very contemporary in another way, and so on and so forth. But then when I gave the talk, he actually voiced it. And not only that, but there were people who began of the generation also, who began to defend the Constitution and the new state of the country. Like, this has made all of these issues and irrelevant.
Yes.
This is the order. And the students were there, and there were a number of students there. I did not have to be the one, in a way, responding when students were already raising their hand, and it was clear. One of them saying, these are discussions that I saw. Well, to our,
Respected
elders.
Yes.
One of them I remember said very clearly, there is not a single revolutionary line in the South African Constitution. And it began like that.
Okay.
So it was so palpable and clear. Yeah. And these are the heads,
yes,
progressive South African intellectuals, leaders that have put
or
their energy,
considered
their time,
activists, yes,
the risk
yeah,
a lot.
Yeah.
But the rhetoric, the discourse, the logic, the terms that they use did not seem, in my opinion, did not seem to be enough to do a radical critique of what is happening now and to unveil the problems that are happening now.
So that reminds me a lot of what Noam Chomsky said. He said that for basically, if you look at which the liberal discourse is framed, it certainly is a very framed discourse. They allow only a certain amount of conversation, but within that conversation, they make it very rigorous and even critique, so that you think it's actually this academic freedom, or it's a freedom to discuss and to critique, but it's still very, very controlled. And so even these kind of progressive individuals do not realize that the mind is so decolonized that you're still working from within these frameworks, and that you cannot extend into the new language, and that is the language of decolonialism.
Yeah, because they invested so much, I think, probably a number of them on Western leftist discourse or Western liberalism as the opposite to apartheid. So the dynamic or the dialectic seems to be, at least to some of them, between them. And I think maybe closing to 1994, after exploring with more radical discourses, a number of the leaders maybe saw that as the successful way forward. In a way, because that is the way in which other countries, leaders of other countries, are going to support the movement, if it appears as the liberal one.
Yes.
But if the West, or if countries in the West and in the North, they see that the opposition is between an apartheid regime and a radical, really radical revolutionary movement, maybe this country will still be under apartheid.
That is so true. So now you spend time with the students, and you've, of course, engaged with them on a one-to-one. I'm sure many of them know you on a first-name basis and discuss their thoughts with you. The one thing which struck you was the intelligence of the students, and it just struck me too. And I believe that they, unlike the Western media and the stories that are put forward, that these students just don't understand, they don't read, they don't interpret, they don't understand. I find them to be very, very thoughtful individuals. They're giving a lot of time, a lot of effort, they're doing political school, they're engaging in critical discussions. In fact, very often as a teacher, you feel small next to them because they come with such big ideas and such good critiques, something that you have not thought about. So when you sit and you look at this, and you look at this change in the dynamics of the students in South Africa to this very staid and static kind of academics, what kind of possibility is there for the student when we call for this decolonizing of the university space? And is there a moment, a rupture, an opportunity for them to break into that particular field?
Yeah, let me give you a very illuminating anecdote that I saw that illuminates this, what you're talking about. I witnessed an exchange between a president of an academic institution here in South Africa and one student. And actually, the president, she was responding to a talk that I gave, and there were students in the audience. And in the talk, the president says, well, Professor Maldonado-Torres is going to talk about decolonization and decoloniality, and then she said, I'm not familiar with these terms, I'm coming from another field, he's coming from another, and so on. And she continued, right? I took it, well, sometimes scholars do say that when they are in different fields and so on. Yeah. But at the end of the talk, and one of the students raises his hand, and he wants to target that area to discuss that, to discuss the introduction to me and the way that the president was referring to these areas about decolonization. And he said, you are the president, how can a president of a higher institution in South Africa, that is part of Africa, a country that in the last 50 years cannot be understood at all without processes of decolonization massively happening in the entire continent. How can you be the leader of an institution in this country and not be aware, not be cognizant, not even be an expert in a way in this area? How are you going to lead any institution in a space that has been so deeply marked by decolonization, and then introduce someone and say that
you don't know,
that you're not familiar with that? Yeah. Right? And it's clear that the expectations they have, and that makes you realize, usually the academics are saying, well, we have this criteria of excellence that is very high.
Yes.
And the students, we have to be careful because they can lower it down.
Yes, that's what I hear all the time.
Yeah, but when you see this, you see that the student was positioning himself, he was bringing another criteria of excellence and acceptability. So how can it be that a president of an institution is not well-versed, does not know all of these problematics, all of this vocabulary?
This new language.
Yeah. So they are bringing a new criteria of excellence. They are challenging. So, I think that there are ways in which university leaders, they can own their own ignorance in part, and they can use this moment as an opportunity for the standard of excellence to go higher in this sense that the students are inviting them to consider.
But I think to get there, you need a certain amount of humility. And that seems to be lacking in a lot of academics. But we have to go to the break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about this. We'll see you after the break.
بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار ظلم وحلا في مولده النغم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار ظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, and welcome to the second segment, the second interview today, and finding me with on IT, sorry, again. It's a long day. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the second segment today on Finding Me at the ITV networks with my very special guest, and that's Professor Nelson Maldonado-Torres, and we're talking about decolonizing the university spaces. Professor, before we went to the break, you raised a very, very important anecdote, and I think that's the reality. The challenge is, of course, which I find is that there's too much arrogance amongst academics, the unwillingness to embrace and to relearn, because, dealing with the decolonial subject, learning the knowledges of other people's, means that they actually have to get off their high horses, open books, read and learn. Yet they expect the students to do that, but they are not prepared to do that. And so that kind of arrogance, I think, filters in and prevents this whole process of decolonization, which is my personal experience of what I see in the university spaces. But more than that, what kind of other experiences do you find, or have you found from the different movements, from Afrikaans, Rhodes, Fees Must Fall, etc., and the understanding of the student in terms of the myth of democracy and how it has been perpetuated in South Africa? That's the first question. And the second question I want you to address is the critiques of the students, of the fallers movements. Yes, we support the movement, but yes, the students, we'll any day stand with Rhodes Must Fall, Fees Must Fall, but why are the students violent? So always this critique that comes, the speaking down to, in spite of claiming to support the students.
In terms of what I have seen from a number of the students is this, heightened sense of the contemporary problems of the country and the world, and they are building their own education. So they have obtained already outstanding material, and they can proceed with brilliant analysis of the situation. And so that has been most impressed. And they have questions that are very theoretical. They go from the very theoretical, highly theoretical, to the very practical. And one interesting thing that I have noticed is that the students, when they are facing power and certain structures, they're very strong because they think that it is necessary in the context, and I think in the context that have ignored them for so long, and they think that is a strategy and even a performative strategy, strategy in front of power. But then when they are thinking and when they are dialoguing, I have noticed many of them be extremely humble, and they show vulnerable and kind and open. So you see, right, the sort of the assertive, arrogant, violent students, and you also see some of those students themselves in certain contexts, and rage and the anger and all of that, and then also the humility, the care, the carefulness, right? And I think that it's not a contradiction. They are different to different contexts they're raising. But the problem is that the always power is able to execute violence in an apparent, more peaceful way, because it can structure the order already in its own terms. So a university administrator, a professor in the classroom doesn't have to do a big demonstration to be violent towards a student. You just structure things in a way, things are already in favor of your violence towards anyone. So that's what, and they want to bring that into visibility. In order to disrupt the space, they need to enter a space to make it, they need to behave in a certain way, but that doesn't mean that they are irrational, too passionate, and they are not thinking or anything like that. And that's very important. Now, those who sort of always find excuses in a way, problems. And the first thing to realize is that, first off, who is the one making the judgment? And in order to make a judgment about a movement, particularly if you are not participating, if you're not disinvesting from the system and risking as much as those, I think it is problematic. The very posture of having the arrogance of becoming the judge. Right? It's not a question that whether it is good or bad. The question is, who has the right to speak? We all think that we have the right to question and speak and so on. And I think that if we're really honest and radical, no, it should be those that are genuinely divesting from the system, committing time and energy and resources. Those are the ones who can, in principle, have the position to voice, to say something. The other kinds of critiques seem to me posturing and an extension of coloniality. And that is overwhelmingly so. Right?
And you've noticed this in South Africa as well in terms of the narrative?
All of the time. I mean, that I think is even people who fought before. Well, in my generation, we did this, and now, and I give my opinion. But no, having contributed to a revolutionary process or to a very important progressive process once in your life or once in the history of the country doesn't mean that you have a license until the day you die about giving your opinion and your judgment with arrogance and superiority. And the students have noticed that, and I think many of them see that as a problem, the sort of condescendence with which they are taught. And that is a fundamental problem. So I would start there. Who gives you the right to speak? By virtue of what you take that right and you have this arrogance? Because that may be part of the problem to begin with. But the second one is that when we say the students are doing this, or do I agree with the students or not, we talk as if the students were this cohesive, well-organized structure, all make decisions, they decide, and whatever happens, we attach them to all the students.
Yes, a monolithic body, basically,
So, like when we're talking about universities are different. Universities have paid administrators, very well paid administrators many times. Faculty, they communicate with each other, they have security forces. So if something bad happens at the university, I think that, I think it's valid to say the university did this and so on, because it's a well-structured,
well-organized
structure. But it's not the same with the students. We often tend to equal the university on the one hand and the students. But they are two completely different structures and realities. The students is many individuals with similar interests belonging to multiple groups, multiple organizations. For me, what is impressive is that with that diversity and heterogeneity, they still come together, meet, do a Chuckville in a UCT, the University of Cape Town.
Yes.
They take down a statue. That in spite of all of that diversity, they meet, and they are some terms that they all coincide, and that they pressure the administration, and that they can bring change.
So they have a unity of purpose, basically.
Yes, fundamentally so. But that doesn't mean that whatever happens, a car was burned there, this was burned there, now they move the students. I don't think that that's the analysis. The analysis is, this is a plurality. What happened in this specific case? What was the confrontation with the police? That these students in particular, who among the students? I think that it requires that analysis, right? Which is different in a way with the university because it's so structured. And even with the university, we have to be careful.
Yes.
Sometimes it's some associate dean or a dean wasn't the president, it was against the chancellor, and what you do is you fire that person if they make a bad decision.
Right.
But it's different with this, with the students. So
it's not contextualized. Yeah, it's not contextualized usually.
Yes,
in the case of the students.
So, but you see, it's not strange to see this because to begin with, when we have people voicing their opinion and judgment as if when we have that arrogance, what can you expect will be they will how do you expect they will look at the students? They will have this double standard about how they evaluate the university administrations and so on, and the students.
What do you think about the amount of students that have been incarcerated? I mean, in South Africa last year, more than, I think, 800 students were imprisoned, and the kind of treatment that they received from the courts. Student activists who are innocent of any crimes were jailed for so many days, put with actually hardcore criminals. How do you look at this, and what do you see? What are your thoughts about this?
I mean, that's liberalism. This liberal democracy has had this way of dealing with challenges to it that goes beyond the legal norms that it sets for itself. Right? And so, but what is tragic here is that it is students that are struggling for better conditions for everybody.
Yes.
And they get to be treated that way. Like other people would be treated, if anything, it's different between a criminal and a political prisoner, for example. And there is a difference between a political prisoner, a criminal, and a student activist as well. And some of the things, they may be doing the same things in some cases, but they are not exactly the same acts.
No.
Right? And the state should know better. If these are students, meaning they are invested in teaching and educating, these are opportunities. These are opportunities, I think, to engage differently the students that is find to be problematic in this way, but also an opportunity to educate the nation, and also an opportunity to actually then pay some attention to what they are saying and to change the dynamics and the structure of the universities. But there is no pressure to the universities to do different, really. The pressure, if anything, is to make sure that they convince their communities that the fees are coming and they will keep increasing.
Yes. And that the students are the criminals, basically.
And the students, this is a criminalization of the student body. And so it's common with these sort of Western democracies, but it's really lamentable and tragic in many times.
We're almost at the end, and I just want to ask a very important question. Do you think that the South African state, and in particular the ruling party, the ANC, has lost a golden opportunity to do something really powerful and dynamic in terms of the students' uprising in the fallist movements?
So far, I think they have definitely done. They have definitely lost that opportunity. Now, the semester will be starting soon. It's starting right now.
Yes.
There is another set of fees that will be applied or being applied as we speak. They are already in anticipation of what may happen, what the movement would do. So here is yet another opportunity for chancellors, university presidents, the ANC, everyone who has some power and who can make a difference. Here is another opportunity to do different and to really move in another direction. What hopes that I have of that? Unfortunately, not many based on what I have seen, but clearly it's another opportunity, and the students are making clear that they are letting know everyone that they expect no less from the government. And these are not only citizens of the government, these are students, many of them are the youth, and it is a key decision what a party that stood against apartheid how is it going to stand up in relation to those that are challenging the continuity, the continued patterns of that very apartheid?
Do you think that it is feasible to have fees must fall, that a state and a country like South Africa can run on no fee education?
I think that any country can make a commitment. It's a matter of priorities and commitment. I think definitely it can. But it's a question of priority, it's a question of commitment, it's a question also of the economic model and the social model. And the predominant social model is one of individualistic investment in education. So all the method of paying, even if the government subsidizes it so that they can do it, the idea is that I have to pay as an individual for my education so that I get back later and when I sell my workforce. And that's a very different model than the model that says education is a right for everybody to cultivate their talents and contribute back to the community. But when the state is not interested in forming communities, but is only interested in forming individuals for the labor market, a labor market dominated by whites, then, of course, it will be called impossible.
Yes, and I think we have to leave it there, but you raise a very important point, and that is the different structures in terms of capitalism, the decolonial thought, and the decolonial generous discussion on raising this new humanity, new communities. But more importantly, we are at a critical point, I think, in South Africa's history, and the start is to decolonize the minds. So with that, thank you very much for sharing your time and for sharing these insights. Fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
قسما بالله رب العالمين وارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء.
هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم